So as an obvious case, also the question about what does this chatbot, ChatGPT, AI developments we've recently seen, what does this do with our company, is on my table. And today I want to take you on a journey with me to see how we currently think about the mutual playing together of wiki and chatbots or artificial intelligence in general. The topic here, the talk is called Wiki and AI, a beneficial connection. There's a question mark. If you do a quick research on, say, Twitter, which I did, then you find a lot of voices that say, okay, now with that power of ChatGPT, of OpenAI, or of AI anyways, of chatbots, there is no need for wikis anymore, in particular Wikipedia, of course, because that's the flagship wiki out there. So we see people saying ChatGPT is the new Wikipedia. Is that the end of Wikipedia? Who relies on wikis? Consult ChatGPT, it's better. I replace my Google searches, my Wikipedia time, with working on ChatGPT. Of course, that is, as being a wiki company, that is slightly alarming. But I can spoil the end of the talk. I think definitely that's not the case. So AI and wikis maybe can mutually benefit. Also here, we can see that in Twitter voices. So for example, there is a woman saying she uses a wiki to collect prompts. So to collect a good way of how to interact with the chat GPT, with the chatbot. There are people that rightly see that chatbots, that the AI somehow has to learn from something. So if we don't have any base data out there, any training data out there, then where does ChatGPT draw its answers from? So that's also, of course, an important topic we need to discuss. And there's also people saying that the interaction model of ChatGPT, of chat, is quite nice. But what you need is like the basis, the database somehow. So there's some hope for wikis. And we can see that there is some potential for those two technologies benefiting from each other. Okay, so let's take a look at what are, like, as a quick overview, what are skills that AI does bring that we could use in wikis. Obviously, we've all seen those examples of ChatGPT generating like huge texts. They're really cool. It can summarize, it can answer questions, it can improve text. So take an article, say, okay, please remove all the spelling errors. Please, write it in a more readable version. You probably have seen things like write this article in a way that a 6-year-old person could understand it. So all these kinds of text improvements, definitely cool. We can tag or categorize. We can use it for translation, for brainstorming, suggestions, expert assistance. And that's just a small subset of what's possible. Obviously, we could now talk for 3 hours, iterating through all of these possibilities. And I guess there's a lot of potential in there, but to the best of my knowledge, that is not the crucial bit if you want to join those two systems, because there's just such a vast range of possibilities that we need to think more about how can we make that available, how can we make that potential available in the wiki. Before I go into that and show you what we tried and some thoughts, of course, I think we should also keep in mind that there are some concerns. Of course, there's a lot of concerns. I also assume you have read about things like the chatbot not being polite, AI turning into like a killer machine, whatever. Let's just put that aside, right? So we're not talking about the existential threats of AI here, but we do have some phenomena that these chatbots bring that might actually affect the way we work in knowledge as knowledge workers, and we need to be aware of those. So I guess one that comes up in all business contexts is privacy and data security. So we spend a lot of time getting GDPR compliant, proving that we secure our customers' data, that we secure our own data, stuff like that. Now there comes ChatGPT, and people start just asking random questions, and so the question is, what happens with that data? I mean, those tools are cloud-based. They are elsewhere, typically in the US space. So, in terms of privacy regulations, there are some complications here. Also, many of those tools are not exactly clear about how they use them and they sometimes don't know. You have to see that these language models work in a way that nobody really can explain or understand in detail, on a detailed level, what happens with the data you feed it into. So basically, you feed data into that model, some magic happens with calculations and matrices and whatever, and then you get an output. But you don't know if the input finds its way out somehow. So there have been cases of leakage. I think, if I remember correctly, it was Samsung, who did not allow their employees, or does not allow their employees anymore to use ChatGPT because they've seen data leaking out, like internal data. So that, of course, is a big concern, and yeah, we have to see how we can address that. Another one is these language models. They work in a so-called non-deterministic way. So in a normal software program, hopefully, when you press the same button twice, you get the same result twice. That's not true for ChatGPT. If you ask ChatGPT the same question, it kind of depends on the mood of the system, whether you get there is some, the volatility is there. It's mostly there in detail. So the general response is good. Otherwise, we wouldn't see those impressive results. But in detail, it differs, and it sometimes gives you like more detail on one side or more detail on the other side. It's just like you would talk to some natural person, which also does not do the same content on the same question all the time. Interestingly, though, so that's one thing. That's also important when you try to somehow connect the ChatGPT with like traditional software. For example, I've tried that, and I'm going to show you later, to make it search within our wiki, and it's not so easy because what we need is like a standardized formal output which the software can read that. But you don't get that same standardized output every time, but it just comes up with the new ideas. So it sometimes adds JSON parameters by random. I ended up asking it for creating me a Google search, and sometimes it searches in the news section instead of the normal section, just as seemingly random to me. Also, part of that volatility is small changes in the prompt may have big effects. So if you, instead of write me something, you say, tell me something, then it might be that the result is totally different. So we have to figure out a way of how to get reliable results and reproducible results and so on. And of course, that also went through the media. These language models tend to produce output in any case. They just, they're based on word completion. So you give it like a sentence and say, get me the most likely next word in the next sentence. Now, most likely, if the likeliness, the highest likeliness is say 30%, then the most likely result just is at 30%. So it's not, it doesn't have, ChatGPT doesn't have a concept of truth. It is like, it has a concept of what is most likely to be there. That results in interesting behavior where you ask ChatGPT a question and then it fully confidentially gives you a result, but it's totally wrong. We've had that. We've had customer requests, I think about a BlueSpice module called organizational charts. And somebody asked ChatGPT, how do I do organizational charts in BlueSpice? And it just tells you install the extension BlueSpice org charts, and it also tells you how to do it. So that's interesting. But the fact is, there is no extension called BlueSpice org charts. So we use diagrams.net, and that's not formally an extension. So it's very different. When that customer request came in, we internally were like researching, did we accidentally publish something? Somebody in the company, which we don't have officially support for something like that. And it turned out that, basically ChatGPT was hallucinating. Okay, so these are parts of the concerns I see, things we need to keep in mind. So the question now is how can we make these AI things actionable in a wiki? How can we work in a wiki when we create document knowledge? How can we work with the powers of AI and chat systems and whatever? My approach typically to such things is I start playing around with the systems and build small prototypes and just see if I can get any insights from that. And that's what I did. And I will give you 4 examples of tests. Some more successful, some less successful, and then we may draw some conclusions out of that. Okay. First of all, I think what we're seeing here is a new interaction paradigm. So in the classical software, we have a mouse, we do have some text, but mostly when we interact with the software, we want it to save something, to create a new article, for example, to do stuff. We click on things, right? We use a mouse, we click. We use dialogues like windows that go up, and we use forms to enter stuff. Now, all interaction with chatbots obviously is natural language, so that's a new paradigm. That is something we have to definitely see how we can integrate that. I did a quick test here in the wiki. You can see it live here if it works well. So I have a page here that's called AI Sandbox. And I can now, that's not a good UI. It's just a quick and dirty prototype to see how it feels to work with the chatbot in the wiki. So I do have a prompt field, and I can ask it like something like write the paragraph about the privacy implications of using ChatGPT. So let's hope it works. And I click on send. And then we have to wait a little bit. And what I expect is that I get some text up here in that field. Yeah, you can see it now. Now what I need to do now is I need to get that text into my edit field, right? So that was one of the questions I had. How does it relate to the edit field here? Let's just see if I can put it here. So now I have this replace selection to answer. Now I have that in my wiki text. Obviously, at some future point, we will look for like a nicer way of interaction. But what I was interested in is how do I work with this like texts that are created, like there's an assistant and it helps me create text, brainstorm, whatever. How do I work with that? How does it feel? So now what I can do is I can select, say, these two sentences. It talks too much. Okay, just these two sentences. Then I say add selection from editor, so I get the selection now in my prompt, and my prompt would be translate this text into German. Again, I send, and in some minutes or seconds, I should get a translation into German. The model, by the way, for tech folks here, the model I'm using is the DaVinci 003 model. That is not as good as the ChatGPT, but it's faster and cheaper, obviously. Okay, so you see now I got that, and I can then again click replace selection answer. So that was one way to approach it. When you play with this a little bit, you then figure soon that you keep retyping the same prompts over and over again, like summarize, paraphrase, whatever. I thought maybe some clicks, going back to the clickable interface would be cool for these like standard actions. But that is something I found interesting. So it's very convenient to type when you have like complex requests, like the request to come up with some ideas, to write a paragraph on X, but when it's like standard actions that summarize, categorize, translate, then you would like to have just a button you see when I click that button now, the prompt changed here, and yeah, so I guess that's because of the quick and dirty prototype. Something changed, but now it paraphrases the text for me, and with replace selection, I can just take it back into the code. Okay. That you see here now, I have a paraphrased text. I think these things like paraphrasing, translation, summarizing, these will be cool features. Also, like beautify this text, write the text out of some bullet points. That's things that can be really helpful at times. So when you work in a wiki, maybe that's a cool thing. Yeah. You see, I was not overly confident in my prototype, so I added some screenshots here, which essentially show the same thing. What can we see from this? Well, natural language, I'm pretty confident that will become a predominant mode of interaction. at least for knowledge workers. We knowledge workers, we type a lot, writing documentation, writing text, writing Word docs, chatting is like a natural mode of interaction. I think that's also true in some not so distant future with other people that may not be so much into typing, but text to speech and speech to text modules are fairly good now. So combine that with ChatGPT, and you can actually talk to your computer. So I think that's a very natural way. Many tasks can be triggered using correct prompts. That's what we saw, like have standard prompts for things. So the user interface, I think, has to assist the user with creating good prompts for standard tasks. As you have seen here, this is not a nice interface. So a good interface where you can naturally interact with the text you see here. Maybe use some context menus, some in-place dialogues, whatever. That will be crucial for the work, and that's what we will put some effort in. Good interface for working with existing content, not with the one you type into it. Okay. Second thing I found is we increasingly we use multi-step interaction, especially when working with chatbots. So again, an example, I asked. Now I went to ChatGPT because that interface is more like a chat, and I think it's this one. Okay, so I asked it with the prompt, you're a MediaWiki editor, create a Lua template. Now, Lua template is something that's a bit more complicated than just normal wiki text, but I thought I'd challenge the AI. To be honest, I did not try it, but it looks good at first sight. So I asked it to get me a template that outputs a green dot when we are ahead of a due date, and create a red dot when we are past the due date. And as I said, it looks cool. That, by the way, is one of the typical examples where these chatbots may enable non-coders in the future to also do this kind of tasks. So that's an interesting thing, and also finding for me that we can see that ChatGPT is capable of writing complex MediaWiki content, which is also BlueSpice content, obviously. But now I was not happy with this because I do have a red and a green, but I wanted to have a warning sign when the deadline approaches. So I went here and just asked the chatbot to change the template in a way that we get an orange dot 1 week before the due date, and it did. So it gave me that new template. But what you can see here is I used the dialog. So I started with one request. I got a result. I did not like it perfectly, so I started to refine that result and worked with the AI in some way. And if you transfer that to the working wikis, and it's not necessarily templates, then that will probably also be a cool way of working with the wiki. So you say, write me a paragraph on how to install BlueSpice, and then it gives you something, and you say, yeah, but please add the actual commands I need on Linux to do that. So, iteratively, you work on the content, you improve the content, and that's something we will see, and we need to cater for in a wiki also. So that will be one of the next steps, obviously, in the prototype, to add some sort of history of interaction here. So findings, ChatGPT also already knows advanced wiki syntax. That's very great. Iterative processes will lead the way. That's at least my I'm convinced on that. And that is especially true for more complex tasks. So the simple task like translate this or simple instructions is not so hard, but if you start generating knowledge, or you want to refine that, then you will have to get into a dialogue. Okay. Third one, I want to show you something which I personally like very much. So I'm a developer. For developing code, there is a really cool tool that's called GitHub Copilot. So what it does is I start developing my code, and then it gives me like auto completions for what I want to do. So now when I press enter, just see what it does. It suggests. It analyzes this code, and obviously it's fit for wiki text. It understood that I have like a list here, a bullet list. So it repeats the pattern. It also does it in a non-simplistic way. So it understands that we are talking about data types, which we iterate. And it also understands that the labeling is being done in German, whereas the first part is being done in English. So that I found quite interesting, and you can now just go ahead and let it help you write the wiki text. I found when I do coding, I found that a very nice way of interacting with the AI. So it just gently pushes you into a direction, or gently assists you, not being very intrusive. You don't have to do anything except press tab if you like the suggestion. If you don't, you just keep on typing. So if I don't like that, maybe I can add in applications and start writing something. And then, it completes my sentence, and maybe that's what I just wanted to do. By the way, before you find that too cool, that is probably hard to do in wiki interfaces, but I'm exploring ways to do it. So I think the best assistant is one you do barely notice. So it just is there, it helps you. These completions are very good for pattern-based tasks. So, but pattern-based in a complex way, in an intelligent way. So what's a pattern? A pattern, in my view, is also when you write a policy paper, because your policy documents always look the same. They have the same structure they should have. So if you can make the system aware of the standard structure of your paper, your wiki, then this will be really helpful. Okay, so until now, we have mostly talked about interactions and how a chatbot can help us actually work in the wiki and improve the wiki. Now, I think there is also a dimension to it that goes way beyond. I guess on the one side it's obvious. On the other hand, that is like where there's a lot of fantasy on my end, at least. That is for your chatbot, and I mentioned that before. The chatbot needs to somehow know what is true, or where's the knowledge. ChatGPT is great. It was trained on a lot of everyday knowledge data, like books, like Wikipedia, like Google. But what it does not know is your domain-specific knowledge. And on the other hand, we do have that volatility as an issue, of the hallucinations as issue. So we might need to come up with ways to actually mitigate these issues. So here's an example, which is actually from, I tried to integrate Wiki and Rocket Chat. So that's what you can see here. And the integration here, and I get back to the screenshot because it's nicer to see. The integration that you see here is not that I trained the chatbot with our internal wikis data for privacy reasons, but I was trying to figure out how can I query the wiki? How can I just take that query that you see, like BlueSpice Assist, that's the trigger word. How do we test disaster recovery in the cloud? And then it should give me a query string, which it queries the wiki using the actual search, and it gives me the output. That way, we would totally not have any hallucinating things, and it's more about, do I get good queries out of it? To be honest, it was not a super success, but that's probably also due to the design. So I'm pretty confident that if we do some fine tuning on this, we will get more information, but at least, I get like relevant links here, or relevant images. I can find an entry point into the wiki, but yeah, it's not the perfect way. Imagine if we could do something like this. So we have that's where I think I want to get to at some point. We do have a chat, I guess. A lot of you also use company chats, and I found that this is the place where a lot of knowledge is being generated. People ask questions over the chat. There's answers. The answers are really good sometimes, but then mostly the chat users fail to just summarize that and put it onto a more persistent place like a wiki. So I think a really cool application would be to basically have that like a dialogue like this one here. How do I solve X? Try Y. No success. This error. Try Z. Yeah. Hey, Y. And then you go to Victoria. That's how I call the Wikibot. And say, please summarize this and send it to the wiki. And then it summarizes and suggests a wiki page. And you can then go iteratively, like in a dialogue, with that Wikibot, and add that knowledge the piece of knowledge you just generated to the wiki page, which in turn, in the future, can be a training data for the chatbot again. So you basically have a loop of creating knowledge, which is confirmed by humans, which is persisted in the wiki and then can be used to feed the chatbot for further inquiries. So what's the thinking here? Chat and other sources are where knowledge is created. So with the help of AI, you can easily summarize this. The wiki is a place to store knowledge. And we need to differentiate, can we draw the information or should we draw the information directly from the wiki? That is when we need precise information. Or can we train the chatbot to just use the data from the wiki? Which maybe in a year and a half will also be as precise as drawing directly. Okay, so what did we learn, or what did I learn from this? I'm totally confident that Wiki and AI have a symbiotic relationship. That means they benefit from each other. AI helps create content. The wiki can be used as a knowledge base, as training data. And what you can see is that when you work in a wiki, you can basically, collaborate is maybe a big word, but you can work with the AI. The AI can store stuff it found as truth. It can it can translate it into text, as we have seen with the summary persisted in the wiki and then be retrained with that data. So it may even be that the wiki is like a perfect place for language models, for language bots to work with humans. User interface, in my view, is critical. All of this stuff is designed to make it easy, and the great success we're seeing with ChatGPT is, I think, also based on that a lot of the interaction is natural. It's language-based. It's like we interact with other people mostly. And I think if it were just sending data at us, I don't know, via data crunching, as intelligent as it is now, it would not be a success. So success is because it has a very cool interface. Yeah, it's unobtrusive, but it's language-based. And last thing is concerns need to be addressed. So how can we do that? Some ideas, privacy and internal data. So when ChatGPT came out, everyone was like, oh my God, and now they won the race. And nobody else can ever get good AI systems anymore. Instead, what we're seeing is there's a lot of AI models out there. Some of them are open source, some of them are closed source, but the open source ones yield not as good, but similar good results. That may be one solution to the data security question, to just run your own intelligent model somewhere. Improve reliability. I found that one needs to spend quite some time on designing good prompts. What do I ask the chat? How do I ask the ChatGPT? How do I set up the role of the bot, etc., etc. Then you can get fairly reliable results and avoid hallucinations. One idea is to draw data directly from the wiki.